The Serapeum is associated with the Apis bulls because there is some kind of connection with a celestial intelligence and what these underground structures really represent.
The Serapeum boxes remain among the planet's most astonishing mysteries. Every detail of these 24 granite boxes feels strange and puzzling, filled with unexplained irregularities. Found in 1850 by French scholar and Egyptologist Auguste Mariette inside a massive underground necropolis of tight passageways in Saqqara, the Serapeum boxes have fascinated modern researchers. Thought to be sarcophagi or coffins for sacred Apis bulls, their flawless precision, sharp angles, enormous weight, and underground location have left archaeologists, engineers, and historians perplexed. Even today, the most advanced technology and diamond-tipped drilling tools would tremble at the immense challenge of matching the mathematical brilliance of the Serapeum boxes. How could an ancient Egyptian civilization, using copper tools and chisels, cut and shape solid granite with such extreme precision? How were these 24 massive boxes, each weighing between 70 and 100 tons, transported to the site and then perfectly aligned and placed into their niches? Archaeologists suggest that the Serapeum of Saqqara served as a burial complex for sacred Apis bulls, believed to be living manifestations of the god Ptah. But why would the Egyptians invest such staggering effort, labor, manipulation, and refined craftsmanship just to bury dead bulls, even if considered divine? It feels excessive. Carved from enormous granite blocks, the Serapeum boxes rest deep within miles of underground tunnels, featuring astonishingly perfect 90-degree angles. Ancient builders achieved exact geometric precision on the interior walls of the boxes, even across spans of 11 feet. The mathematical skill required to create these boxes is truly extraordinary, and modern calculations show the dimensions vary by mere thousandths of an inch, an almost unrepeatable level of accuracy. How did ancient Egyptians, using iron, bronze, and copper tools, accomplish such precision? And what is the real historical purpose of the Serapeum of Saqqara? Conventional explanations from mainstream archaeologists are full of gaps as massive as the Great Pyramids themselves. Egyptologists typically date ancient structures using inscriptions or engravings. Accordingly, the accepted dating of the Serapeum boxes relies on the rough, clumsy scratches carved onto a few of the boxes. These markings have been dated to around 3000 BC. Yet the hieroglyphs on these specific boxes appear crude and lack the original mirror-like polish seen on the granite. Numerous micro-scratches and tool marks also show where chisels slipped across the hard stone. Picture constructing these heavily over-engineered granite boxes with astonishing polish and precision, only to let an amateur scratch sloppy carvings on top. This graffiti-like etching cannot compare to the exceptional craftsmanship and mathematical mastery embodied by the Serapeum boxes. What if these boxes were created in another time period and later engraved by an entirely different culture? Yet the larger mystery still stands. Regardless of which ancient era designed these boxes, how could simple human strength alone accomplish such an architectural feat? As we explore more details surrounding these boxes, the mystery only deepens rather than clears. Instead of answers, the reality behind these boxes becomes even more perplexing. According to researchers and archaeologists, the granite used for some of the Serapeum boxes does not even exist in the quarries near Saqqara. In fact, much of the granite came from quarries located in Egypt's eastern desert, an area with no river routes linking it to Saqqara. The journey covers nearly 800 miles of rugged mountains and harsh terrain. Picture moving a single granite block across that distance without modern tools, without machines, dragging each block individually on wooden planks. Does that truly seem achievable? However, not every box was made from that eastern desert granite. Some of the boxes were carved from granite sourced in Aswan. Aswan lies roughly 500 miles from Saqqara, and while both locations are connected by the Nile River, imagine placing even one of these quarried stones onto a boat around 3000 BC. Since each completed box is estimated to weigh between 70 and 100 tons, scientists calculate that a single raw granite block for one sarcophagus would have exceeded 200 tons. Egyptologists often describe massive stones placed on wooden sledges, with sand poured beneath them to help slide the load across the land. But when you consider the enormous size and overwhelming weight of these boxes, such explanations quickly lose credibility. Even more puzzling is an unfinished box abandoned in the middle of a tunnel, with no wooden sledge beneath it. Without machinery, even hundreds of men working together would struggle to move such a block, and yet that many people could not physically fit inside the narrow tunnels. Examine this particular box, as it reveals several crucial clues about the construction process. First, the tunnel is only 2 feet wider than the stone itself, leaving no space for the large workforce supposedly needed to push such an immense weight. Second, the box remains unfinished, showing that the work was not completed above ground. Instead, the builders transported the stone into these cramped tunnels to carve, refine, and polish it. Finally, this box suggests that the project was abruptly abandoned for some catastrophic reason. Some boxes are missing their lids, and one massive lid rests sadly near the entrance tunnel. Clearly, these boxes were left behind at various stages of completion. Now, imagine that working environment: narrow tunnels, some alcoves offering less than a foot of clearance, workers shaping hard granite with saws and chisels, generating thick clouds of dust trapped underground with almost no ventilation. Dust would have filled the air, yet this is supposedly where ancient Egyptians achieved the astonishing precision seen in the Apis boxes. How do we handle granite like this today? Modern methods rely on explosives to remove massive chunks, which are then lifted out of steep quarries using heavy machinery and sliced with huge hydraulic saws. Even with today's technology, most people shy away from working with blocks this large. It's simply too difficult and labor-intensive. Mainstream theories credit the Egyptians' skill with handheld tools, but even now, cutting, drilling, and shaping a box like this would be an enormous challenge. To replicate these boxes today, experts would need massive manpower and advanced machinery. Using modern tools, mechanical drills, saws, and precision carving instruments, the process would start by quarrying a single enormous block from eastern Egypt, transporting it to Saqqara, hollowing it out with machines, maintaining precise geometry with advanced measuring tools, cutting lids from the same block, polishing every surface, and finally moving it underground. Achieving all this thousands of years ago using only human muscle is mind-boggling. Modern engineers even suggest that handling a block this size would be nearly impossible, so they would opt to build a box from 6 smaller granite pieces instead of a single monolith. Just looking at the Serapeum boxes, its clear logic demands a force beyond mere human strength. Hollowing these giant blocks would have required not just enormous manual labor, but advanced stone-cutting skills that remain challenging even today. The wall's uniform thickness is equally baffling, leaving archaeologists and historians without satisfying explanations. The smooth, polished exterior of the boxes is already remarkable, but the interiors are even more stunning, perfectly reflective, maintaining a glass-like sheen with no modern polishing applied. The boxes continue to astonish experts and enthusiasts alike. Researchers note that stoneworkers of that era likely didn't use abrasive techniques. Instead, a chemical solution may have been employed to achieve the reflective finish. Hardened residue found on the base of some lids suggests a lost formula was used. Even with obvious damage and lids destroyed by ancient raiders, the interiors reveal the Serapeum box's extraordinary perfection. Level, smooth, and polished. The craftsmen clearly didn't ignore the interiors, yet all this effort was expended simply to house mummified bulls. Observing the physical precision, flawless geometry, and the absence of fractures in the stone makes one question the traditional explanations. Using stone mauls to hollow out the interiors would have cracked the granite, and chiseling away such massive amounts by hand would have taken an impossibly long time. If we accept conventional archaeological theories, we must believe that an ancient civilization without machinery or modern technology quarried enormous granite blocks from eastern Egypt and Aswan, lifted 200-ton blocks out of the quarries, transported them hundreds of miles to Saqqara, and then crafted them into geometrically perfect boxes, all for the purpose of burying mummified Apis bulls. And why build such enormous coffins for bulls? Were they meant to make the mummies more comfortable? The boxes vary in size, but the largest measure over 6.5 feet wide and 13 feet long. If comfort was the goal, why are other Apis bulls found in simple wooden sarcophagi not far from the Serapeum of Saqqara? Pharaohs themselves were often buried in tight coffins, barely big enough to hold their bodies, so comfort in the afterlife was hardly a priority. The facts just don't add up. Another puzzle is the choice of granite. Why not use limestone, which was preferred in many other Egyptian constructions? The Serapeum boxes were buried underground, protected from weathering, so limestone would have sufficed. Limestone is softer, easier to shape, lighter, and abundant in nearby quarries. Using it would have dramatically reduced labor in quarrying, transport, and construction. Yet the Egyptians went hundreds of miles to source granite. One intriguing explanation comes from Russian cosmologist Konstantin Borisov. Granite is ideal for airtight containers. It's dense, non-porous, and high in quartz crystals. Under mechanical stress, granite can generate an electric charge. Borisov speculates that these boxes weren't just coffins, but could have functioned like giant batteries. When subjected to immense pressure, they could produce voltage strong enough to ionize air, potentially causing it to glow. The absence of soot or burn marks inside the tunnels supports the idea that fire torches were not used underground. Could this explain why ancient builders went through the incredible effort of transporting massive granite blocks to Saqqara? With lids weighing nearly 30 tons, the boxes might have been intended as pressure chambers for a sophisticated scientific process. A 19th-century sketch reinforces Borisov's idea, showing piles of stones placed on top of the lids, seemingly to amplify pressure and trap whatever was inside. If these were just coffins, why add extra weight? The mummified bulls weren't going anywhere. What process required such extreme measures? Why did the lids need additional pressure on top? Egyptologists describe hundreds of craftsmen working in dark, dusty tunnels, dragging massive granite blocks through narrow passages, and centering them with perfect precision, then repeating this process 23 more times. The motivation and determination required suggest a purpose far beyond a burial site for bulls, hinting at something far more profound and mysterious behind the Serapeum boxes. So, if we combine Borisov's findings with research by engineers like Christopher Dunn, the idea of the Serapeum boxes as giant batteries starts to make sense. Dunn's extensive research suggests the Great Pyramids of Giza weren't just monuments. They were energy-harvesting machines, designed to generate power for ancient Egyptian civilization. This perspective naturally raises the question of whether Graham Hancock's ideas about prehistoric architects might actually be more plausible than mainstream archaeological explanations. Hancock's theories are controversial, proposing the existence of a technologically advanced civilization that existed before recorded history, only to be destroyed by a cataclysm. He points to cultural and religious texts from around the world, many of which hint at a great flood. What if this flood wiped out a civilization far more advanced than the Egyptians, leaving behind remnants of technology that later civilizations, working with copper tools and chisels, could only partially understand? What if humans had once reached a level of technological mastery, only to be forced to start over? Could our understanding of ancient civilizations and megalithic structures be clouded by a far greater and more unimaginable truth, that humans had been here before, with machines, power, and technology? To the public, the idea of a lost advanced civilization may sound far-fetched. But consider this. Are mainstream explanations, which rely on chisels scraping at granite to produce airtight, geometrically perfect boxes, really more believable? Archaeologists have yet to convincingly explain the inconsistencies and gaps in logic, and modern historians often find conventional theories lacking when judged against practical reasoning. This leads to a compelling idea. Perhaps the ancient Egyptians didn't actually build the Serapeum boxes. They inherited them, much like we inherit ancient structures today. They may not have understood the purpose of these chambers, so they used them to house mummified Apis bulls. The crude carvings on some boxes support this notion. The craftsmanship of the boxes far exceeds the skill shown in the surface inscriptions. The masterful construction and amateurish carvings clearly don't come from the same civilization. Mainstream archaeologists insist that the same culture capable of executing such precise geometry on hard granite somehow lacked carving precision. The few boxes with inscriptions are rough scratches at best, while others remain perfectly smooth with mirror-like surfaces. Dating these boxes based on the crude hieroglyphs is clearly flawed. The boxes were likely intended for something far grander than bull burials. Perhaps complex energy manipulation or a scientific process humanity has yet to rediscover. Skeptics dismiss Hancock's theories, pointing out there's no evidence of machinery or advanced technology within these ancient structures. They claim Egyptian stoneworkers achieved this skill through patience, practice, and generational knowledge. Yet human physical capacity has limits. Even with incredible dedication, moving and shaping massive granite blocks to perfect dimensions strains credibility. Similar discoveries across Egypt challenge the idea that copper tool-wielding craftsmen alone could have produced these architectural marvels. It increasingly seems the Serapeum boxes, like other megalithic wonders, may hint at knowledge and technology that ancient humans have long since lost. Other archaeological sites feature similar granite boxes with flawless geometric precision, something that is far from easy to achieve. There is also speculation about the use of diamond-tipped drills and advanced heavy machinery in constructing the Serapeum boxes and other ancient megalithic structures. But is there any proof? Some believe there is. One striking example is a similar granite box displayed in the Cairo Museum, featuring a single uneven cut through the stone. At first glance, it appears to be an abandoned project caused by a mistake. But when you examine the angle and depth of the cut, it almost shouts evidence of a startling reality about its makers. Such a cut could only have been produced by something slicing through granite at extremely high speed. How could a chisel carve so deeply into hard granite without hammer force, which would have cracked and shattered the stone entirely? Now consider the saw marks visible on other granite boxes inside the Cairo Museum. They closely resemble marks left by modern bandsaws. In fact, they suggest an even more efficient cutting speed than what we achieve today. Could these marks point to mechanical cutting technology similar to modern granite cutting machines fitted with diamond-coated blades? The idea of such technology existing in ancient times sounds outrageous. But is the alternative explanation of slow copper and iron chiseling really any more convincing? Then there are the perfectly circular drill holes found in various granite artifacts across Egypt. How do mainstream archaeologists explain them? The uniform diameter and depth of these holes would require a high-speed drilling device with a diamond-tipped head. Another example is a cylindrical granite artifact discovered near the Great Pyramid, etched with a continuous spiral groove, much like a vinyl record. How could such a spiral be produced without rapid rotation? The notion that the Egyptian civilization simply discovered and repurposed the Serapeum boxes becomes increasingly believable, especially when paired with the crude carvings found on otherwise architecturally perfect boxes. It seems the missing piece may be a lost technology, erased by a great flood or another catastrophic event, waiting to be rediscovered. Such a discovery could explain not only the origin and purpose of the Serapeum granite boxes, but also the precision and grandeur of other megalithic structures around the world. For now, the mysteries surrounding the Serapeum granite boxes remain unresolved. Their precision, material choice, transportation, and placement defy clear explanation. Why were these boxes dragged deep into an underground maze? Why use such an unforgiving material? How were the interior walls flattened with accuracy down to 1/12 the thickness of a human hair? How were these massive weights moved hundreds of miles from distant quarries? How were they hauled through tight tunnels with no room for workers? Where did such extraordinary mathematical precision come from? And why were the interiors polished to a glass-like finish if they were only meant to house bull mummies? Yet, if these boxes were indeed built by a long-lost, technologically advanced prehistoric civilization, new questions arise. How did they fit machinery into such narrow tunnels? What methods did they use to maneuver these colossal boxes into position? Theories involving gods, aliens, or giants are often proposed, but each carries its own implausible elements. Modern civilization still waits for a rational explanation, and without solid evidence, all we can do is form personal conclusions, choosing the ones that sound the most reasonable, if that's even possible.